Case file number 3568, written by Anonymous. 13 glasses and a wink. A close friend of mine tragically died in his 20s in a plane crash. One of those losses that doesn't make sense no matter how many times you turn it over in your mind. He was the kind of person who filled a room, the kind you assumed would just always be there. But he was also someone who had thought, at least a little, about the inevitable. A couple of times in passing, never making a big deal of it, just tossing it out of the way, as he did with most things, he'd mentioned that when he went, he wanted an Irish wake. No somber affairs, no hushed voices, and no wilting flower arrangements. He wanted people to have a good time, to raise a glass, and to send him off the way he lived. We tried to honor that as best we could, but grief has a way of making everything feel heavier than intended. The day of his memorial service arrived, gray and quiet, the way those days always seem to. A group of us drove together, no one saying much, all of us lost in our own private memories of him. When we pulled into the parking lot of the funeral parlor, someone in the car noticed it first and said it out loud so the rest of us would see it too. Directly across the street was an Irish pub. We all looked at it for a moment without speaking. Coincidence? Maybe. It's not that impossible, really. But it felt like something more, like a little wink and nudge from him from wherever he'd gone. It felt exactly like something he would have arranged, if he could have. The memorial service was beautiful and brutal in equal doses, the way those things are when someone dies too young and too suddenly. People shared stories. There were laughs mixed in with the tears, which is what he would have wanted. But when it was over, there was only one place any of us were going, and we all knew it. 13 of his friends, all of us in our 20s and 30s, all of us still too young to know even remotely how to do this right, walked across that street together and pushed through the door of the pub. The place was warm and dim, smelling of wood and beer, ordinary and perfect. We found space at the bar, and someone said what we were all thinking. We needed 13 shots of Irish whiskey, one for each of us, and really, one for him too. The bartender nodded and started lining up the glasses, pouring without a word. He understood the weight of the moment without needing it explained. We watched him work his way down the row, the amber liquid catching the light, and the whole bar felt still. And then over the sound system it started. Elton John's Funeral for a Friend. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The song filled the room. That long, mournful, searching instrumental. And it was so precisely impossibly right that it stopped all 13 of us cold. Some people gripped the bar. Some looked at the ceiling. Some just looked at each other, eyes already going glassy. There wasn't a dry eye in the house. We didn't plan it. We couldn't have. None of this was planned. The radio station just played it at the exact moment it was needed, in that exact place, as a bartender poured a row of Irish whiskey for a group of grieving friends honoring a man who had asked casually in passing, never imagining it would matter for eons to come, for exactly this kind of send-off. We raised our glasses when the bartender finished pouring. Nobody needed to say much. The song said it for us. He got his Irish wake, after all. This just touches my heart, and it pivots back again to what I've been discussing in the last few videos, where if you have a loved one that dies, family, friend, whatever it might be, someone that was close to you, they won't always appear to you. Maybe because they can't, or maybe because they think you would think that you're going crazy if it was an all-out apparition of a ghost, right? So maybe they just choose to be subtle. I mean, is this even subtle? Maybe not, but it's not a direct ghostly apparition. It's kind of the balance between the two, where it's pretty extraordinary, and you wonder, how is this even possible? Even if it was your friend, how did they manage to influence the station to play the song right then? It seems clearly inputted by a will, a mind, so probably was your friend. I don't believe for a second it's an actual coincidence. What are the odds of that? Astronomical. Like Big Bang, fate of the universe, astronomical, right? The mystery then is not about your friend being still around. It's that how could he input so many variables to produce this outcome? Pretty cool that he was able to. However he did it. Welcome, I'm Paul, this is Dave. Today I have 12 Glitch in the Matrix and paranormal stories for you. My favorite 2. The first one you just watched, so warming and sad in a way too, but just, yeah, you realize it. And the second one involves a seemingly helping hand. Let's get to it. Case file number 3569, written by Heffa Pig. Instinct at 2 a.m. Around the time I was 9 or so, I had this bedroom that was, to put it mildly, an experience. The landlord had clearly gone through a decorating phase because the walls were covered in the most aggressively bright pink floral wallpaper you've ever seen. But the real showstopper was one wall covered entirely in small square mirrors, maybe 50 of them, arranged so tightly together that they formed one big reflective surface. My parents had put my bed right up against the wall, so the whole thing essentially functioned as a headboard. Every night I'd fall asleep staring at my own reflection. Totally normal. One night I woke up suddenly, and what I felt wasn't grogginess or confusion, it was urgency. An almost electric certainty that I needed to move. Not roll over, not sit up, but actually move the hell away. It was so clear and direct that it felt less like a feeling and more like someone standing in the room and speaking the words out loud to me. You need to move. So I listened. I grabbed my pillow, shuffled down to the foot of the bed, and pulled my knees up to my chest. Less than 2 minutes later, half of those mirrors came off the wall, right onto my pillow, right where my head had been. Shards of broken glass scattered across the sheets like the world's most dangerous snow. I just sat there at the foot of the bed, heart hammering, staring at it. That was the first time I ever really understood what people mean when they talk about a gut feeling, wordless knowing that bypasses logic entirely. It's one of the sharpest memories I have from childhood. Or, of course, it was a ghost, and if it was, genuinely thank you. My face is unscarred, and I'd very much like to keep it that way. Case file number 3570, written by Google Flunt. Excavation of a Dream. I had a lucid dream at the age of 13 or so. I dreamt I was over across town at my cousin's house, and we walked in the woods. In the dream, at one point, I turned to see a large excavation. We both saw it and exclaimed to each other. We were not pleased with this intrusion into our woodsy realm. Several weeks later, I happened to miss my bus home from school, so I decided to walk home with my cousin. Of course, we took a walk in the woods. I had what felt like a déjà vu experience as we came upon that spot, just as it was in the dream. I told him I had seen this before in my dream. So strange to have a prescient dream about such a meaningless thing, just a big hole in the ground, a storm sewer being built. At that time in my life, I was experiencing and remembering 4 dreams most nights. I would journal them for a time, and I still remember a number of them, although through many recollections, a fire and a flood. I've lost that journal and many personal items from those times, though. I should also mention that in my waking life, I was often bullied, both by an abusive older brother as well as schoolmates. I was wrestling with nightmares. I sought to proactively intervene in these dreams to protect myself, and to take advantage of them too, as in flying dreams or lost in an unfamiliar landscape. Direct my experience to go into an unfamiliar building, for instance, to force the dream to add details, to find someone to talk to, or to find out why I was there or where I was. I was returned to these unfamiliar towns, landscapes, and seascapes so often that eventually I knew a large swath of the coast. Along this path, occurring nightly, I learned to become lucid and self-aware in my dreams. So on the occasion of this particular dream, especially because of its vivid nature, not being dreamlike, but like being there in real life, I took note of it in the morning. This stuck with me for days afterward, but I don't think I journaled it or even mentioned to my cousin. It wasn't until those weeks later, when I neatly slipped back into the dream moment, when we stood there in the woods, and I said to him, "I've seen this before," that I mentioned it to any other person. So, to my objective reality, I had the dream, recalled it in the morning, remembering it, made a note of all that, filed it away, and weeks later, re-experienced it. A vivid but banal memory of a walk in the suburban woods and a desecration of nature in the form of a construction project. Case file number 3571, written by Defiant Hurry 6091. A license to prove I exist? So, apparently, I have a doppelganger just over the bridge. I live on the mainland. About 2 years ago, I'd pop into a kava bar that was about 1.5 miles from my house. I'd go in, try different things all the time, and the kava keeper would bring me a specific drink that I didn't ask for or request. He was like, "It's your usual." I was confused, asked for what I wanted, and the manager just kind of looked at him, and I went on my way. Another time, a couple of weeks after that, the same thing happened with another kava keeper at the same bar. Again, I'm confused, and he said, "Aren't you so-and-so?" I was like, "No, I'm the original poster." I grabbed my order to go and just leave. I went in another time, this time with the manager. He grabs a doppelganger order and announces how much. He looks at me kind of confused and says, "Aren't you so-and-so?" I really think he thought I was toying with him. I pulled out a credit card to pay and showed him my license because my card says check ID, because I felt like I had to prove who I was. He was blown away. The manager goes back over to the bar park, points at me while holding my driver's license. Both of them come over and tell me that there is a look-alike, and they thought I was just playing a prank on them. And so I pulled out my registered nurse's license as additional confirmation, because they really weren't convinced I was who I said I was. It was crazy. That's when they told me I had a look-alike at the kava bar just over the bridge that looked, talked, and acted just like me. We kind of laughed it off, and that was that. But just this past month, I had a patient sitting in my chair, and I was going over side effects for a medicine that I was getting ready to infuse. He kept looking at me kind of weird and asked me how the studio was going. I looked perplexed, and then he said, "Aren't you teaching anymore?" I'm like, "No, I haven't been back in the pool for a few years because of scheduling conflicts, and I'm really busy with my family." He asked me how long I'd been a nurse, and I'm like, 20 plus years? Suspiciously, he asked if I miss coaching. I'm like, "Dude, I'm not a coach, and I have no idea what dance studio he's talking about." And then he said, "You really don't teach dance," laughing. I'm like, "No way, I don't teach dance." That's when he tells me his friend's daughter was in my program. At this point, I'm like, "Dude, it's not me." I had to convince him by pulling up my registered nurse's license and showing him that I'm not this person. His gabbers were flabbergasted. I don't have social media anymore, I'm 45 female, since I deleted it last spring. But I did some Google searches and can't find this woman anywhere. It's so strange to me because people thought I was her, and maybe vice versa. It's still a mystery to me. Case file number 3572, written by Harm Boy. Caught between a car and a kind place. I was 8, maybe 9 years old. We lived on a quiet street in a small town, the kind of place where kids still roamed around unsupervised because nothing bad ever happened there. Good, pure times. Anyways, it was late afternoon. I was walking home alone, which I did all the time back then. It was maybe a 5-minute walk, nothing I'd ever thought twice about. A car was parked along the curb just ahead of me. Dark colored, I think. I don't remember the make or model. I was a kid, and I wasn't paying attention to things like that. What I do remember is that as I walked past the rear door, it swung open, fast. Before I could even think about what was happening, a hand shot out and grabbed my wrist, hard. An adult's grip. And I was pulled, just yanked sideways, half off my feet, dragged toward the open door. I remember screaming, but I don't know if any sound actually came out. Everything happened in about 2 seconds. I was leaning into that car, my whole body being pulled in that direction, and then something grabbed my other arm. Not roughly, but firmly. If I have to pick the right word, kindly. A hand, or what felt like a hand, seized me by the left forearm and pulled in the opposite direction with a force that matched whatever had me on the right, which I couldn't see. I don't think whatever was in the car was supernatural, but I do think my child brain blocked it out from memory. So there was a split second where I felt like a rope in a tug of war, and then I was free. Stumbling backward onto the sidewalk, landing hard on my palms and knees. The car door slammed shut, the car drove away. I sat there on the pavement, scraped and shaking, and I looked around to see who had pulled me back. There was nobody there, not a single soul anywhere nearby. The street was completely empty in both directions. No one in the yard, no one on the porch, no one jogging past or walking a dog. Nobody. I sat there for a long moment, crying. The grip on my left arm had been real. I could still feel the pressure of it as a lingering sensation on my skin. I ran home and told my mom. She called the police. They took a report and drove around the neighborhood, but because I couldn't tell them what kind of car it was, they really had nothing to go on. For years, I convinced myself there must have been someone, a stranger, who helped me and then slipped away. Maybe ducked into a yard or around a corner before I could see them. Or maybe it was Batman, he puffed away in a cloud of smoke. I held on to that explanation because it was the only one that made any sense, but I've never fully believed it. The timing was too perfect, the street too open, and the disappearance too complete. Well, I think we're all thinking it, that this was your guardian angel, most likely. Normally, I think that guardian angels have to possess a person to interact in the physical world, but this would be evidence that they don't have to. They certainly do sometimes, so I wonder why they do sometimes and not if they don't have to. I don't know. Maybe they have more influence or potency if they do possess someone, but in this case, if they had, well, the person they had possessed would be out of their mind after the event too, and they would still be there. The other possibility, though, is this, like, you blocked out the memory, you think you blocked out the memory of the person in the car that was trying to abduct you, presumably. In doing so, maybe you blocked out the person who saved you as well? So maybe they didn't vanish, that was just your own memory overriding what actually happened. I don't know about that, because you wouldn't want to erase the part of the memory that is positive, right? But maybe mine doesn't always work in those precise ways, so that's a possibility too. But Guardian Angel, classic, and I think it fits perfectly well here. They saved you and moved on. Case file number 3573, written by Kota Mars. Passed, rerouted, and still late to class. I am a college student, female 21, and this happened to me last year. I feel like everything has felt very different since then. For example, some of my favorite foods aren't good anymore, and I'll bring up past events to my friends and family, and they will remember them differently. I also just felt incredibly off after this event. Last fall, I had a very strict schedule due to classes, and my bus came for me to go to class. I lived with my girlfriend at this point, and she also had a very strict schedule. We basically never deviated from the schedule because it would cause us to miss class. On Mondays, my girlfriend would leave for her class at 2:50 p.m., and I would leave at 3:55 for the 404 bus to get to campus by 4:20. I remember the specific times because I wrote this all down when it happened. So on this Monday, I said goodbye to my girlfriend at 2:50 before she left for class, and I sat down to eat some lunch and study for a test. I set alarms for when to leave my apartment, and I left that day at my normal 3:55 p.m. I got on the bus, and I saw a girl who was in the class I was headed to, and she's always on the same bus as me. This specific bus is for my college. I rode the bus like normal, and when I got to campus, the girl in my class didn't get off the bus, but whatever, it's not my problem. So I go into the building, get in the elevator, and look down at my phone. The time is 3:10? but I left the house at 3:55. There's absolutely no way I could have said bye to my girlfriend, eaten lunch, studied for my test, and gotten to campus by 3:10. There isn't even a bus that comes between 2:50 and 3:10, besides the one that my girlfriend got on. I am convinced that the bus I was on crashed, and I died and switched timelines to this one. Even if that didn't happen, this was 100% a glitch in the Matrix. My girlfriend was not checking her phone when I called her, and realized that I had somehow gotten to campus in that amount of time. She only checked her phone after class. But I have a dated and timed picture I took shortly after realizing this, because I knew that something was up. My 3:55 alarm did in fact go off again at 3:55 when it hit that time after the glitch. Also, that girl showed up to class that day when it was actually time for class. I have no explanation for any of this. I know the buses could have been running late or early, but that still does not explain how this happened. At least I cannot come up with an explanation for it. Case file number 3574, written by The Real Curmudgeon. Cloudy with a chance of bass. The most exciting thing on the agenda that day was making it home before dinner got cold. I was coasting down the road on my old 10-speed, hands loose on the handlebars, and then pure freaking weirdness hit me square on the top of the head. Cold, wet, and unmistakably a fish. I skidded to a stop, nearly eating the curb, and looked down at the pavement where it had bounced and now lay still. A gray, glassy-eyed bass, roughly the length of my forearm. I looked up. Nothing but open blue sky. I looked around. No one on the street to toss it at me. Why on earth would anyone do that anyway? No low-flying plane. Just the fish, a bicycle, and me, standing in the middle of a perfectly landlocked neighborhood more than 100 miles from the nearest lake, bay, or ocean worth mentioning. Later I learned it's a real thing. Waterspouts and updrafts can suck fish right out of the water and carry them miles before dropping them, unceremoniously, onto whoever happens to be below. Apparently it's been documented for centuries. That's what the science says, anyway, but it seems like it's more than some water puff madness to me, but I don't know. Now, you're right, I've heard about this, and I actually heard about a story where hundreds of fish, or even more, they fell like rain on a town. Now, this may have been a long time ago. I don't know if it was recent, if there was real documentation of it, but it's interesting. I don't know the full extent of the science behind it. Yeah, you can have updrafts, it's kind of like a tornado, can pick things up and fling them pretty far away, but hundreds of miles or 100 miles? That seems pretty extraordinary. If the nearest body of water that could have a fish in it, or a bass, was 100 miles away, could it be really flying in the sky for that long, carried by some updraft? I don't know. Is that possible? Maybe. Or I like to think that maybe there are space-time portals even inside water, so this fish is just swimming around and just suddenly way up in the air, 100 miles away, falling to its death. Poor fish. Case file number 3575, written by Dandelion Dreams. The drop in my gut. My father had been in and out of the hospital for almost 5 months, violently ill, and hadn't left for the final couple. He had just been diagnosed that week with pancreatic cancer and given maybe 6 months, and I'm sitting in homeroom while they're doing the morning announcements on the intercom, and I'm staring out the window by my desk. I suddenly feel like my gut dropped, and I burst into tears. It was silent, but I wrote on a piece of paper I needed to use the restroom because I couldn't speak with the lump in my throat, and handed it to my teacher. He looked at my face and told me, "Go." I got to the restroom across the hall and absolutely crumpled. I had no idea what had come over me. I was crawling out of my skin, anxious, absolutely full-bodied, sobbing now, a puddle of a person on the floor. Turns out my social studies teacher heard my cries and came in and scooped me off the floor, doing her best to try to figure out what was wrong, and all I could sputter was, "I don't know." She brought me back across the hall once class had been sent to the first period of the gym. My homeroom teacher hugged me, sat me down, and told me all about his wife, who had been knowingly battling for about a year at that point. He was the absolute best, and both teachers did a fantastic job with the blubbering child going through something she didn't even understand. As soon as I saw my mom at the bus pickup, it confirmed what I had been suspecting, but couldn't even believe. Somehow my body knew when he was gone. I hadn't even been able to see him in months by then. I lost control at 9:06 a.m., the moment he passed. It's been over 20 years and I'll never forget that feeling of overwhelming dread and sadness absolutely taking me out. Case file number 3576, written by Fam Probs looking at this. Curtains in the Ruins. In 2019, I went to Salou in Spain with family and friends. Our hotel was in a nearby town called Cap de Salou and was across the road from a very clearly abandoned hotel, shutters nailed down, burnt out, etc. On one of my last nights there, I and 3 others went to see a show in Salou. This show started at 6 and ended at 10 p.m. This is when strange things started happening. After the show, we got a taxi back to our hotel, then go to the bar and buy a couple of drinks. It's quite quiet, as it's out of season at this hotel, and as it was so quiet, my friend and I decided to go to a nearby beach and cove and take a few pictures of the night sky. We took them on my friend's phone. I remember that part vividly, as I had a budget phone at the time and would never have been able to take a time-lapse video or long exposure of the night sky. Afterwards, we go back to the hotel, and a thunderstorm starts. Yet again, we're all taking videos and photos of the storm as we've never seen a thunderstorm like it. The next morning, my friend realizes he doesn't have his phone or wallet or passport. We think for the longest time it must be in the room, as he paid for the taxi and the bar and took pictures and videos on his phone. I'm looking through my videos at this point to see if he had his phone on him in any of my footage and watching the thunderstorm video. In the video, the hotel across from us had its lights on, and someone clearly opened some curtains on the second floor. I looked out the window again, and sure enough, that hotel was fire damaged, with all shutters on the windows down and rusted over. I went to forward the videos to the rest of my friends, and it got corrupted, and I couldn't play it on my phone anymore. Eventually, we rang the taxi company and the place where the event was held last night. The taxi company has my friend's phone, wallet, and passport, and is adamant that they were in the taxi no later than 8 p.m., and shows us proof, with receipts and dash cam footage, that we were in that taxi at 8 p.m. That would have been impossible. The show we went to was 6 to 10 p.m. and advertised that as well. My friend paid for the bar and taxi with his own money from his own wallet. It's been several years now, and I brought this up again to a friend of mine recently who was also on the trip, and they have no recollection of the evening and said they came back from the trip and went to the bar and bed. I think I'm the only one who remembers it vividly, or at all. Case file number 3577, written by Single Bedroom 6284. The Autopilot Twin. There's a park near my parents' house that I used to walk to so I could smoke. One day while I'm sitting on this bench in the park, just listening to music, not smoking this day, I see this guy who looks similar to me, but is wearing slightly different clothes. Like at the time, I wore a lot of classic rock shirts, and this guy is wearing something similar. I watched him walk past me without even looking at all, like he was an automated robot almost, and then head to my usual smoke spot by the back of the park. I still remember this eerie, chilling feeling as he walked past me. A few weeks later, my mom saw the same guy at the park and thought it was me. I have an odd walking pattern, an autistic walk some might call it, due to bad posture as a kid. My mom claims this guy had the exact same distinct walk as me and tried calling out to them. Apparently he just kind of looked back and gave her this strange look, then kept walking. She was so convinced that she insisted I was doing drugs because the person acted so strange when she tried to say hi. It seems extremely odd that a mother could mistake her child like that. My dad and sister also spotted the same guy weeks later with the same walk. Case file number 3578, written by Spicy Pickle 157. A lucky drive, twice. I was driving home from school one night, and as I was about to get off on my exit, I noticed there was construction blocking the whole off-ramp. I got flustered because it's an hour drive home for me, and I just wanted to be home and not have to go all the way around through a different city and come back that way. Anyway, I passed the blocked off exit, then noticed there was another exit that had the same name as the one right before mine, and thought, that's odd, I didn't know there were two Lucky Drive exits. Then my exit appeared again, and I assumed it was just an alternate exit to go to the same town, and thought that was great because, like I said before, I didn't want to wrap all the way around to go home. But then the exit had all the exact features, like the way it curves around, ends up in the same spot, etc. I looked behind me to see what exits popped out where I was, and there weren't any. Found out the other day that there is no alternate exit to end up where I ended up, and that I had just taken the original blocked off exit the whole time. I'm still so confused, I told my siblings. My sister suggested imagining the exit, but I know what I did and what happened. So this isn't a space-time portal, because you still had the exit that was blocked off, and apparently it wasn't. Even if you reset back before it, it would still be blocked off. So it's almost like you change realities temporarily. Space-time portals might be able to do that. There are some rare instances where people don't just move in the physical world that they inhabit. They change universes, but only temporarily. Somehow they're pulled back. It's not like quantum immortality where it's a full transition via your soul. This is physically porting to a different universe and being brought back. Seems like a enhanced space-time portal. Multiverse space-time portal. They're upgraded versions. Don't know how or why, but it's pretty interesting. In fact, it's pretty cool, and I hope that's possible, indeed, because that would be the way to escape the heat death of the universe. If we do achieve biological immortality, well, eventually the universe itself will kind of die, where all the energy is dissipated via entropy, and there's nothing left to do anything. Work can be done. Work just meaning any physical change or movement or action. So if there's a way to escape to a different universe where the heat death hasn't happened yet, that'd be cool. Case file number 3579, written by Future Direction 5174. Bells, Ribbons, and the Other Sister. UK. I am a Morrison dancer. My sister, 60 years old, passed due to a brain aneurysm in December 2023. On St. George's Day 2024, there was a dance out on the quay. My son pointed out one of the dancers on the other side. Doesn't she look like my auntie? Her team came from a town about 20 miles away. I approached the dancer and told her that she was my sister's doppelganger. She is 9 months younger than my sister. I showed her a 20-year-old photo of my sister. She showed me a photo of her 20 years ago. I showed her a recent photo where my sister wore her hair loose. She showed me a recent photo of her with her hair loose. We even showed her daughter a photo of my sister. Why have you got a photo of my mom? When we got home, I showed my husband a photo of the doppelganger in her Morris uniform. I never knew your sister also danced Morris? Friends of my sister also think the woman in the photo is my sister. I meet up with the doppelganger at dance meets throughout the summer. It is the weirdest feeling. Did my father cheat? My sister was the only one of us siblings who inherited my father's complexion. She was dark and curly-haired with tan skin, whereas my brother and I are blonde and pale. There is no doubt in my mind that my sister was my father's child, and the doppelganger is equally sure that she is her father's child. Talking to her feels like I have my sister back, even if it's only for 5 minutes. Now time for the jokes of the day. The cast of Friends once got stranded on a life raft in the middle of the ocean. No one knew how to get back to shore, except for the actress that played Phoebe. Lisa could row. What about David Schwimmer? He could only save himself, I guess. A wife walks in on her husband playing on his PlayStation. The house is filthy. I thought I asked you to sweep the house, she says. I did, replied the husband. I found no hostels. Did you hear about the dictator who walked into a bar? He ordered everyone around. How do you get 100 math teachers into a room that only fits 99? You carry the one? A tiger went to a doctor for back pain. The doctor touched the tiger's back and asked, Is this a spot? The tiger said, No, that's a stripe. Video up here. YouTube thinks you'll like it. Check it out. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe. Bye.